And we're back. This is WSIC. I am Joe Vagnone, and I'm here with my co-host, my favorite co-host of all times, Nicole Greer. She is the owner and founder of Vibrant Coaching, and she is the Vibrant Coach. Nicole, you have a spectacular guest for today.
I do. I'm so excited to have Dr. Will Sparks with us today. He was actually my professor at Queen's University and learned so much from him about leadership, and he has got a brand new book out, and I'm going to let him tell us all about it. Will, tell us about your book.
Well, thank you, Nicole. And Joe, really glad to be here. The name of the book is Actualized Leadership, Meeting Your Shadow and Maximizing Your Potential. You were talking about SHRM before the break. It's published by the Society for Human Resource Management, and it's actually shipping today.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
So I got an early version of that.
Yes.
You understand that, don't you?
I do.
You notice he gave you a free copy.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
That is great. So, okay, we're going to try and dig into this, okay? So be light on me as I try and understand this, right? I don't have all of the qualifications that Nicole does, so let me try and keep up.
Okay.
Excuse me. So, Nicole, take it. I'm choking.
Okay, well, so this thing of being an actualized leader, tell us what that means to be actualized.
So the concept of self-actualization really comes from Carl Jung and Abraham Maslow, two famous psychologists who talked about the tendency to realize our fullest potential. When we put ourselves in the right kind of environment, we have the right mindset, we take what is the potential and we realize it or we actualize it. So that's living and kind of leading at our highest and best self.
And so as soon as I open up the book, the first thing it says is that leadership is about your personal development, seeking personal transformation. I got to be honest with you, that is not what I think of when I think about leadership is me personally growing. I found that to be an interesting thought process.
Well, yeah, I think that the concept is that if we're going to take our teams and our organizations, depending on what level you're leading, whether it's level of self, a group, a department, a division, or entire organization, if that organization is going to realize its highest potential, return the maximum value to shareholders, and make money and do good in the community, the leader, the concept I've created is called a leadership shadow, and essentially the leader has to get out of his or her way, get out of their own ego or shadow and allow others to flourish, and in doing so allowing the organization. And so that comes from oftentimes what can be somewhat painful initially, but ultimately it's very productive development and transformation.
And so when I read this, one of the things I read was that personal growth and transformation happen only when we have the courage to face our shadow. Be a little more specific. When you say shadow, you're talking about some of our personal characteristics, the negatives or things that slow us down. Am I correct?
Exactly.
Whoa. What he said was
exactly. And so what he's trying
Will, I set you up with that. Buddy.
Yeah. So what he's saying in the book is that everybody has a dark side.
Ah.
Okay, so like go Darth Vader on it in your mind for a moment.
Yeah, it's kind of the notion of our Mr. or Mrs. Hyde. So we have a Dr. Jekyll that we try to project to the world, but under stress, fear-based reaction occurs, and it's this kind of an asserter, for example, is a high need for power, results-oriented, kind of a classic leader, but their shadows of fear of betrayal. So they can become controlling, arrogant, condescending when they're under stress or that is activated. So the shadow is that negative aspect that we have to be willing to own, first of all, acknowledge, and when we do that, it actually releases us. So one of my favorite quotes is Carl Jung said, "We don't become enlightened by pretending to be perfect. It's only when we have the courage to acknowledge our darkness that we're able to grow into our kind of highest potential."
And you say that when somebody calls you a walking contradiction, that should be considered a wonderful compliment.
Yes, it is, because it means...
I have been called that many times, and I can assure you, the people that call me that were not giving me compliments.
No, and after this show, we're going to have a little intervention. I brought Dr. Sparks here for a couple of reasons.
No, but it is this notion of if you've dealt with your shadow, then you can be very supportive of others, listening, empathetic, but you're also candid and direct with folks. So we usually default to one or the other. We're either candid and blunt and not very empathetic, or we're overly empathetic and we kind of sugarcoat the truth. And so that walking contradiction is when you allow yourself to be both. You're empathetic, you listen, but you also provide the person with candid, direct feedback, which I believe is the highest way you can honor a person.
Okay, so Will, let's. Oh, I shouldn't call him Will.
No,
should I?
please.
Doc.
Yes. No.
Yeah, no, I have to call him Dr. Sparks.
No.
He's
I
got
can
a
call
great
him
book.
Will.
He's got a great book.
So, this is great. I get to call him Will. I like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
not me.
Let's back up for a minute, my friend. I was so interested to dig into your book, but I want to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about you personally.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you become this leadership expert? Because I got to tell you something. This is not easy reading, right? I mean, this really requires somebody who genuinely wants to learn and understand what your thoughts are. How did we get here?
So my background is in psychology. My undergraduate master's degree from Appalachian State in organizational psychology.
Mountaineers.
Yeah, Mountaineers. And then I did my doctorate in organizational behavior at George Washington, which is essentially management psychology. So I always had an interest in helping people and in human behavior. My interest in this, though, came from candidly, my divorce, realizing that I had actually created the dysfunction in that relationship. And it came through my advisor, Dr. Harvey, who I thought was going to feel sorry for me like everyone else in my life. And he said, I don't feel sorry for you. You created this dysfunction. And that was a very painful moment of looking in the mirror, but it actually defined my life. It was a defining moment. And what he did, what I realized, is he introduced me to Carl Jung's concept of my shadow, and that changed my life. It's not always pleasant and easy, and I think that's why most of us avoid true self-awareness. But when we have the courage to go into that deep end and have ownership and responsibility, it really does release us or liberates us, I think, to live at our highest potential.
And, you know, Nicole and I, we deal with a lot of small business people. We see that on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that most of the problems that happen in small business, the owners have created in some way, in some fashion.
Yeah, the business often can't get out of the shadow of the founder, especially when you get to a certain point. They've been in control, they've run the business, and then if they're going to grow to that next level, very often they have to step aside or they have to have someone else come in and make more strategic decisions.
Well, and I've said this for years, and you can correct me if you don't like it, and then I'll come up with a new statement. But the truth is, my strengths and my weaknesses, they are together. So the things that have allowed me to be successful, I can't lose, right? I can't agree to drop to the wayside,
right,
so I can correct these negatives. So that's what seems to happen. The very same skill set that allowed me to be successful is now what's bringing me down once I've got this business to a certain level.
That's exactly right, especially with
exactly
a small business. One of the styles is I call an achiever. They're detailed oriented. They're very focused on winning and success. But their leadership shadow is the fear of failure. And so when they face ambiguity or the prospect of losing, those positive qualities like being detailed-oriented, being organized, uber-efficient, becomes critical, narrow-minded, rigid, pessimistic, and often the micromanager erupts.
I think he just made fun of me, Nicole.
No, you are not the achiever. Although you are very successful. We have labeled you and put you in the box, but we're not going to discuss the box of asserter. You are certainly an asserter.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I want to go to break, but before we go to break, you talk about the creativity is really important, right? Mm-hmm. And I kind of made some notations here. And creativity requires things like high energy, being smart, being disciplined, being realistic, being proud and humble. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I do find that successful business people do have this creative, like the way they want to look at a problem, they're willing to open their minds up to different solutions.
Yeah, and that actually gets back to that notion of walking contradiction, because a creative person has passion, they work very hard, they often lose track of time, but then they also step back from that and they can, take a lot of time off. They can be very charismatic and outgoing in front of a group, but they often crave solitude. And so it's these kind of opposite extremes of being able to go into both of those arenas, not at the exclusion of one or the other. And I think that, and related to this notion, very important, is Carl Jung said that all creativity comes from the shadow. So back to your earlier point, Joe, it is all part of who we are. So we're not trying to eradicate it or wrestle it to the ground, because that is the source of creativity. But I think we do need to understand where we go into stress, because it's those that are in our shadow or in the wake of our shadow that often suffer the most.
So let's take a break. We come back. I'm now at the part in the book, chapter 4, where you guys get to define whether I'm achiever, a firmer, or a asserter. Am I correct about that?
That's correct.
And you guys can describe those. Let's take a break and we'll come back.
Okay.
And we're back. You are listening to WSIC. I am Joe Vagnone, and I am here with Nicole Greer. owner and founder of Vibrant Coaching. She is the Vibrant Coach. We are speaking with my new friend, Will Sparks. You will address him as Dr.
Yes,
Will
I will.
Sparks. He is a professor at the MBA program for Queen's University. Before we dig into these different characteristics, I noticed in the book you interviewed a lot of cool people.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been really cool to sit down with some of these people.
It really was. I have everyone from Hugh McCall and Kathy Bassant from Bank of America to Fred Whitfield, who's the president and vice chairman of the Charlotte Hornets, and the most reverend presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, Michael Curry, who actually gave the sermon at the royal wedding.
And it's important, and I say that because I want to make sure people realize this just isn't you making this stuff up, right? I mean, you are asking the opinions and the advice of some very successful leaders.
Yeah, they all endorsed the assessment and the work, and I was really very grateful for their input.
And I got to be honest with you, I don't know what you did to Nicole, but she's like always bragging on you. And at the break, she said you had a great TED Talk that you had put together as well. Was it on this topic?
It was. It's called The Power of Self-Awareness. I recorded it last year in Asheville, and it lays the framework for this work.
So, like, when you can get Nicole to be bragging on you, you got something going on.
That's right.
Okay, so let's talk about this. So there are, unless I did not copy one of these things, there are 3.
Correct.
Okay, so the first one is achiever style. Describe that briefly.
Yes, so the achiever style is someone who's very detailed-oriented. They're efficient. They're focused on winning and recognition. Some famous achievers these have all been profiled by Harvard Business School: Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates. The shadow of an achiever is a fear of failure, and so when they're under stress, those positive qualities become rigid, micromanaging, narrow-minded, and the like. And so the irony is that they actually increase the likelihood they're going to fail if they allow their shadow to activate and take over.
And the next one is affirmer.
An affirmer is a relationship-oriented person. So these individuals are really driven out of personal connections. They're empathetic, they're warm, they're caring. People often tell them their problems. They put others' needs ahead of theirs. Famous affirmers are Mother Teresa. Ellen DeGeneres has been profiled as one as well. So a lot of religious figures. Charlie Brown actually is an affirmer, the great cartoon character from the Peanuts.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the asserter.
The asserter. I'm an asserter, Joe. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say you're an asserter. The individuals are confident.
I don't mind being in the same category as you, Doc. I don't mind telling
Hey,
you.
I'm in the category too. Don't leave me out over here. I'm an asserter.
We're all an asserter. Confident, courageous, very decisive. They are results driven, but the shadow of an asserter is a fear of betrayal. And so under stress, we can become controlling, arrogant. Those kind of charismatic qualities can go dark pretty quickly when we feel threatened, and that's the shadow we have to manage.
And I want people to know that we didn't talk about we were going to talk about this, right? I just brought this up, and you did this without any notes or anything, right? So you know this stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So 20 years of researching. Yeah.
I mean,
I better.
This is somebody that knows what he's talking about here, right?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that he can help you through the book. There are different characteristics you can work on so you can become self-actualized and your shadow shows up less frequently.
Exactly, and that's what the leaders I interviewed that are in the book, each one of them took one of the characteristics, or what I call an attribute of self-actualized leader, and I profiled them for that attribute.
Okay, so now let's move into the next section. You talk about this same behavior happens within groups.
Yes.
It seems like it would be harder to define this inside of a group setting.
It's interesting. That's actually where my research started 20 plus years ago, and so I'm already working on the next book that's going to be Actualized Teamwork, and it's going to be talking about how these kind of shadows, rather than an individual level, I'll be changing the unit of analysis to a group or a board or a team and looking at how these shadows are manifested at more of a group level.
And so you talk about two different things. One of them is a conscious work group behavior and an unconscious or assumption group behavior.
Basic assumption, yes.
Yeah. Can you sort of define the differences between those?
Yeah, it's just like with an individual, you have your conscious awareness and behavior, and then about 90% of what else is going on is all in the subconscious or the shadow. And so with a group, it's very similar. You have the conscious element of what are we here to do, what are we here to accomplish, but the how you're doing it and the how you're communicating and working together, that's part of the shadow or that basic assumption group of this underlying the team dynamic. And if you really want to improve a group, or you really want to take the team to the next level, or the organization, you have to understand what shadows beneath. And the more you bring that up to conscious awareness, the less impact it has on, which is detrimental on the group's performance.
Okay, now we're running short on time.
Okay.
So I'm going to skip to chapter 10 of the book.
Okay.
Because I found it interesting that you talk about beyond leadership, and you talk about happiness and passion and purpose. I find that to be the core to small business success. For me, the passion and actually enjoying what it is you do, I find that to be so important. And I was pleased to see that you felt the same way.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. We often make the distinction.
I was looking for it exactly, but I didn't get it.
Exactly. Oh, Joe. Okay, so every once in a while, this suitor needs a little stroke to his ego. Notice.
We were 3 minutes in. I should pay better attention.
I know. We'll pat his head when this is all over. Good job.
But that is accurate. The small business owner usually is so passionate about what they're doing that they'll tell you that if money has nothing to do. I mean, obviously,
No, you're right. It isn't about money, really.
It is about the mission or the purpose that the person's found. And so those individuals that take the risk and own a business, they're connected at a level, an intrinsic level of motivation that many of us working in large organizations will never know. And to me, that's kind of sad because.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to do this fast.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The 9 attributes of an actualized leader. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm gonna read them off. Oh, you just want to? Whoa! This is a good test.
Oh
No, I'd rather you read them.
Let's give Will Sparks a test.
This is good. I get
Turnabout is fair play. He tests me. We test him.
I get to test. Oh, this is like a dream come true for me. Are you kidding me?
Test the doctor.
Attribute number 1.
Objective.
Oh, ding, correct.
So what I like about this is you give examples, because a guy like me, I needed that when I was reading the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't just understand the word, so you would give me these quotes, underneath.
Right.
They were very helpful. It's just a great book for anybody that's interested in self-perspective and also wanting to be a better leader. How can they get this brand new book hot off the press?
It's available on Amazon. It's available on BarnesandNoble.com. It's actually available on Target.com, and it's Google Reader, and it will be in bookstores in the next week.
And give us the title.
Actualized Leadership, Meeting Your Shadow and Maximizing Your Potential.
Perfect.
And if anyone's interested, they can go to alpfree.com, alpfree.com. There's a free assessment you can take, and that'll let you know what your style and your shadow is.
Okay. So the first attribute is objectivity. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Do you want to add anything to that? Or no?
Well, I mean, it's under assault right now. So it's really interesting because there's this huge push that we're telling everyone that everything's relative. There are no absolutes. There's an entire generation coming out of higher education right now that's being told that there are no absolutes. And Maslow was very clear. He said that being objective was the most important. If you're going to pick one characteristic to be more self-actualized, you have to have the courage and the discipline to face reality as it exists, not as you might want or prefer. And that is under assault today because we're telling people everything's relative. If you don't like something, then it may not be true. And I think that actually does a disservice to individuals.
Number 2, hyper-focus.
Hyper-focus.
I get that one.
Yep. Singular
it is what it says in it, right? Yep.
Exactly. Yep. That's it.
This was an interesting one. Optimal time. I thought that was really interesting. You call it OTO, optimal time orientation. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, it's being mindful in the present, living primarily in the present moment, not allowing the past or worry or anxiety about the future, but giving yourself the gift of the moment.
Are we okay to keep going?
Sure.
Courage.
That is where I interviewed the presiding bishop, the Most Reverend Michael Curry, talked about it's not the absence of failure, as Nelson Mandela said, but is the courage to step through it and do what needs to be done or say what needs to be said.
The best way the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. I understand why he said that. So
yes.
Your attribute number 5 is trust.
Yes, I interviewed Mr. Hugh McCall for that attribute, and one of the things he said he was most proud of in his career is that no one had to earn his trust. He trusted everyone out of the gate. He said if you were on the red bus, he trusted you until you gave him a reason not to.
Self-acceptance.
That's another very important one. For that attribute, I interviewed the CEO of Novant Healthcare, Carl Amato, talked about the need that we have to let go of our imperfections. I'm never going to be 6'2", and so a lot of us carry this baggage where we are fighting a battle that we can't win. So it's making peace with ourselves and allowing ourselves to move forward.
Number 7, candor.
Candor, that's Kathy Bassant from Bank of America. When you truly respect and care about a person, you tell them the truth and what needs to be said.
Flow, what does that mean?
That is getting into the zone. So that is when you have a challenging task that's not overwhelming. It has your full attention and concentration. I hear that some golfers experience that. I personally never have experienced it on the golf course, but it's when you can't hit a bad shot. You just get into the zone.
Speaking of that, Pat just walked into the studio. I know he's been in that zone often. And the last one is solitude. I found this one to be really surprising and interesting to me.
Yeah, because if we stay in the busy all the time and always being around other people, we fail to take stock of our lives and to be intentional and to be strategic in our next decision. And so that is a part of what I call the renewal sequence, solitude, getting away from the noise, quieting ourselves in our mind, reconnecting with our purpose, and renewing ourselves so that when we're back in the arena of whatever that is in life, we're able to perform at our highest level.
Hey, Will, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
You can call him Dr. Will Sparks, the professor at MBA program for Queen's University. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Joe.
Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Actualized Leadership. Nicole, you did good with this guest.
I know I did. I'm going to get an A.
That's right. I think I'm going to come talk to the class. And
you would be a great case study.
I bet so.
Well, that is a great idea.
That is a
They're
good
not
idea.
going to let me on the campus. I got to show you that. Thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you, Joe.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
You are listening to Local Biz Now. I am Joe Vagnone, and I am here with my co-host, Nicole Greer, owner of Vibrant Coaching. She is the Vibrant Coaching. If it's Friday morning, your business matters. We'll be right back.